Broadcasting from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia to around the globe. You're listening to Shark Bite Biz, your exclusive place for business strategy, sales, marketing, and tech in the roaring 20s. And now, here's your host, David Strausser.
You just arrived to the newest episode of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your sometimes glamorous, sometimes rock star host, David Strausser. This is your place to grow a business during complete chaos. As you may have noticed, if you're watching on YouTube, okay, I got a sidekick for today's episode. My son, Jordan. Jordan, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
So, kids, they want to imitate their parents. I got my son a dress shirt. Okay, well, actually, I got him 2 dress shirts. One for Thanksgiving and one for Christmas. His first reaction was, what was your first reaction? That you wanted to be on Shark Bite Biz with Daddy. You remember that? Yeah, so for me personally, I loved it. Remember, as we're engulfed with work, take time during this holiday season to cherish those around you, like your kids, and spend some time with them because they look up to you, they want to be like you, and more importantly, they depend on you. And today, we're going to talk about Breaking Bad. News, that is. First, though, remember, please go download the Shark Bite Biz app on our Android, if you're on Android, at the Google Play Store, where you can also find our fabulous coffee. Alternatively, you can also go to our website where you can get the freshest coffee known on earth, deadhousecoffee.com. Use code SHARK. You'll get 20% off of your order, and we'll get all the proceeds to continue directly growing this channel and making it the biggest and best show we possibly can. Back to today's show. What do you do when something bad happens? How do you handle it? That's what today's show is all about. So who do we have today? None other than Mr. Jeff Hahn. Jeff Hahn is an expert in reputation management and crisis communication for food brands. Growing up on a family farm in Iowa put Jeff on the path to working in the food industry. His grounding in it and professional interest in communications come together through Apron Food and Beverage Communications, an agency specializing in food PR and marketing. Jeff also manages the Predictive Media Network, a national media training service, as well as Hahn Public Communications. Jeff and his team of 36 staff members represent food brands and public infrastructure systems across North America. So without further delay, let's bring Jeff right on in here.
Business strategy.
Jeff, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
David, I'm super happy to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I'm glad to have you on here because you're a surprise guest for me today. So it works out perfectly. So as I was telling you earlier, we do have one tradition on this show. Okay. Since the first interview we've done, we always ask the same question to kick things off. What's your background? What's your experience? What do you do for a living? How did you get there? Basically, in a nutshell, tell us what makes Jeff, Jeff.
Well, I'm at the top line, I'm a PR guy, but my core skill, the critical skill that I work with on a day-to-day basis with clients is crisis communication. And the key attribute for me in that work is that I have this unique ability to turn 10,000 words into 10. So I'm not a shark bite guy. I'm a sound bite guy.
Oh, I like that. That is, I think you just named the episode. So there you go. That's awesome. So I want to ask you, because crisis communication is something that's pretty important these days. What do you define as a crisis?
Well, any public event that knocks a brand off of its strategy is typically can be defined as a crisis event. There are lots of incidents, but knocking off strategy is that defining orientation. It's so distracting and typically reputation damaging that it has to be attended to by the top levels of a brand, a corporation, or organization. But the most important thing for me always is that the issue is public. Many incidents can occur and you never know about them. But when they're public, that's when you have other stakeholders involved, including the media.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just this week, as we record this interview, I can give you two major companies, organizations that are probably operating in crisis mode right now, which is the NFL with John Gruden and Urban Meyer.
Yep,
right?
yep.
And apparently that's just scratching the surface from the reports I'm seeing. And then in addition, you have everything with Netflix, with Dave Chappelle and the employees revolting and, all that crazy stuff. Now, whether you agree, disagree with it, I mean, we don't really get into the political type social arguments on this show, but we will talk about things about the strategy as far as what do you do if somebody just says something stupid. Okay, this happens to me all the time, actually. People that know me, I say things, they're like, they know what I mean. They know the context. But someone can easily read something out of context. And to them, because again, they don't know the full context, they don't know me, how I talk, how I act, things like that. I'm from sales background, so I speak more in generalities because I try to make it sure that we don't get boxed into a corner and then we're being sued. So I speak as broad as possible, but some people may take that liberty a little bit too much and think it's something else. I mean, what do you do if something like that happens and all of a sudden you have a Twitter mob trying to cancel you?
Well, you're right to say that strategic ambiguity is a fantastic tool for someone like you that keeps you in a place where you can continue to add and co-create with other audiences. But when you do get boxed in, when there is a mistake, I think the most important starting point is to measure the intent. What is the intent of the maybe it's just a blunder, but it could be a transgression of serious type where someone has done something obviously wrong. And so the challenge is always to define and discern the magnitude of the offense. Is it an accident? Is it a blunder? Is it a transgression? Or is it a knowingly harmful act? Someone who has intentionally tried to damage a reputation of some kind. So the first thing is just to characterize it in one of those four buckets so that you have an orientation towards the tonality and the response proportionality.
Okay. I mean, I get that and I understand that. And I would probably do exactly as you were saying. But I think one of the issues that we have today in today's world is obviously conspiracy theories / misinformation. And you can see this all across the aisle, both sides. I mean, political beliefs, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's on both sides. I can list off a million cases of every type of group that has been guilty of this. What the facts are and what actually happened easily with social media and people piping it and putting their own twist to it. No. He said this, but he actually meant that. And it's like, no, he didn't mean that, but people are believing that. That's what he meant then. And then you're kind of stuck that even if you put it in one of those four containers, like you said, that social media or public pressure could easily throw it into another area that you never thought it would be. Is that true? Accurate?
Yeah, for sure. And the X factor, what is
The X
underlying
factor. There you go.
that scenario you just described is time. I
Mhm.
may say something that I shouldn't have, but if I quickly correct that to add context, then
Mhm.
I can avoid the damage, especially from social media trolls. I can
Mhm.
control that narrative more. If, however, you're a brand or even a person
Mhm.
who lets time tick past and
Mhm.
you don't course correct what you've said or provide additional information, then others are going to fill in that narrative space. So
Right.
the really important thing for any brand these days, no matter how
Filling in that
small, is to
right,
move
right there.
fast.
Yeah, move fast. But filling in that narrative space is probably the most important thing said on this show, I think, in a while. Not that other guests didn't have important things; they had great things, but in this hypersensitive world that we're in, I think that's one of the best advices that a company can have, because it's very easy that one of your employees had a bad take or a bad tweet. And it could have been, I mean, we're seeing plenty of instances where, I mean, again, John Gruden, there are things that happened when he wasn't even in the NFL 10 years ago, that, the Raiders may or may not have known, because I think it wasn't the communication wasn't with them, it was with another team, and through ESPN at that time that he was chatting. So, I mean, but we're also seeing case after case. There was another big executive somewhere else where, tweets resurfaced from years ago. And all of a sudden, after this major corporation announces his hire, then he's being fired. And, they're having to do a PR thing because of that, because it put them in a negative light.
Yeah, look at the TV show Jeopardy.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
That's
I
one
couldn't
of
think
them.
of the word.
Here we have a case where we've got very high profile hire decision made by Sony on this new host of a very high profile show. And all of a sudden, an outside outlet surfaces all of this history. That's
Mhm.
embarrassing. So what to do? What to do?
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? What is the right form of action? I mean, even if nobody's perfect. I mean, especially if you look at people that might have said something when they're 15 and they're just being, a whole 15-year-olds, and then now all of a sudden they're 25 or 30, and, that stuff resurfaces, and, hey, maybe they have apologized all they can, taken responsibility. I've grown since then. I was a dumb 15-year-old. But how that even if the individual does that, what does the company then have to do? I mean, is it a case by case basis? Should they get rid of people fast to cut off the damage? Should they say, hey, look, we've talked to the person, they've profusely apologized, we think that they've learned from the situation and have evolved since they were 15, and going forward, we're going to make sure that we keep them in check. I mean, what kind of strategy does a company do? Because this is coming more and more frequent.
It sure is. And the first and most important objective for any brand is to get out of the news cycle. What you want to try to do is move from public back into private. Then you can make a lot of other decisions with some latitude. But getting out of the news cycle means you present to the public some sort of resolution. Here's the decision that we have made. And this decision may feel a little unfair to the object of it, like the Jeopardy host.
Right.
Whatever he said was years and years and years ago. Maybe that feels a little harsh, but these days, that is the challenge for any kind of public figure. You've got to move to resolution quickly, pull that Band-Aid off, continue to walk forward, and just talk about the fact that, hey, we learned something right there. Now we're going to apply that corrective action to our next set of decisions.
So with your experience, and you don't have to name names, although it'd probably be fun. But have you worked for PR with any of those types of instances that may have been social media driven, trying to get somebody canceled or booted, or a corporation that said something maybe a little too spicy for the internet and are in trouble? Have you dealt with that to that degree at all specifically?
Not specifically, and my dealings are primarily with large organizations, large brands.
Hmm.
But I have had occasion here very, very recently to step in and help a brand protect itself from the blowback of activities happening in the state of Texas, state legislatures passing laws, and the governor signing them into law around women's reproductive rights. Well,
Right.
a brand that I am associated with and have helped protect for many years is getting smeared into that situation. Very political and very challenging. So, how do we maintain some distance, but still own the fact that, yeah, we're all part of this Texas thing? And
Yeah.
so, finding ways to thread needles is a big part of the challenge.
And that
And
that is hard. I mean,
oh, yeah,
because I mean, for whether it's a corporation or an individual, whether you agree or disagree with what, somebody in Texas or Florida or California or New York
yep,
does, you're not able to just up and move. Some people can, I guess, but the majority of them, they have their roots, they have their friends, their family, their kids, stuff like that, or their employees for their company, and it's not as simple. And I would say that my personal opinion on it all, with that political discussion, how they're mixing that with business, like, hey, unless the business was like actually lobbying for that type of regulation or law, okay, why are you holding them accountable for things that are primarily outside their control? And I feel that that is crazy pressure, because that negative press that you're giving that corporation, I mean, you're hurting the individuals that work in that corporation if they end up losing revenue. You have low income people, minorities, or just regular people too, that are then, possibly losing out on a job because of that outside pressure due to a political cause that has nothing to do with it.
yeah. And a lot of times, let's take another recent case. U.S. Congress passes state of Georgia passes legislation to restrict voter access, and
Mhm.
generally the narrative was cast that they are limiting voter rights in the state of Georgia.
Right.
Major League Baseball then cancels its intent to hold the All-Star game in
Yep.
Atlanta. Coca-Cola's drawn into this, Home Depot's drawn into this. All of a sudden, these companies are being reckoned with and it's pressured to
Right.
make a statement in favor of voting rights. Well,
Right.
here's the challenge from a messaging standpoint. None of that was created by the brands.
Like Coca-Cola, for example, just for
Yeah,
people that don't know, they're based out of Atlanta, I
they're in
believe.
Atlanta. Yeah, Home
And
Depot
I
as
was there
well.
once. I remember the huge Coke machine down there.
Yeah. And so when you think about that, you have to ask yourself, what do those brands have to do with that massively interesting issue?
Hmm.
And why are they expected to be a part of it? Well, today, the expectation from a corporate citizenship standpoint is there. People
Right.
expect corporations and brands to stand for something. And here, in this case, voter rights, I think what a better messaging strategy is, rather than um, address the specific legislation passed, talk about your own commitment to providing employees time off to go vote.
Right.
Hey, you
Right.
know what? We can't change what the legislature's done. It's not Coke or Home Depot's or even baseball's space to be able to do that. What we can do, however, is provide you a special amount of time off to go and make sure your vote gets cast. We encourage you to do so.
Right. And
Oh, the brand is
that's
state within
important.
itself. Yeah.
Right. No, totally understand. And that's like one thing. I mean, even with that specific case, they started canceling all that stuff. And I even remember that I believe it was Stacey Abrams down there
Yep.
who is very active in Georgia politics on the left. I believe very progressive, if memory serves me correct. And she actually was like out there, no, stop canceling this stuff, because whether or not you like what's happening in Georgia, you're hurting minorities, people of color, low income people, because these jobs are being taken away from them and they're being punished for something they can't control.
Correct.
And I think that is what people are forgetting in all of this. And I mean, I wish for the days where work is work, politics, you do it on your own time, unless you work in politics and stuff like that, or it's regulations that affect your business. That's something that I kind of miss those times, because I do feel that it gets a little bit out of hand these days. So
yeah, for sure. And David, what I would say is we're living, well, let me make a comparison. In 1630, the year, the Puritans arrived in America, and they weren't pure as the driven snow. They were intolerable. That's why people told them to get the hell out of England. They're intolerable. Yeah. And today we're living in very much the same sort of mindsets. People are intolerant. And their Puritan orientation means you must be this or you must be that. No place in the middle. I'm saying still, the middle is the place to play. Brands can live there and thrive there. But if you get pushed out onto these edges, that's where you're going to get in serious trouble.
Yeah, because then you're only isolating yourself to one demographic, and we are in a 50-50 split country. So it's like you're going to isolate one side or the other, and the side that you pick, are they actually the people that really consume your products and stuff? You have to keep that in mind too. I think sometimes they forget that and they pander to one side, but it's actually the other side that buys their products. It's just, I don't get it. It's weird.
And I love the way you just talked about it, because it's such a common way of thinking. I pick this side or this side. What my advice to brands, especially in the crisis context, is if you get forced into a choice of one or the other, door number one or door number two, start busting a window into the wall. Find a third way. And that's good advice for any entrepreneur, any small business owner too. Door number one and door number two aren't your only choices. Find that third. Find a window to jump through.
So we had an amazing expert on this show, and he wrote the book Culture to Culture, and it was about business culture. And like having an actual plan, hey, like writing down, just like you would, for any other business plan that you have, but have an actual culture plan for it. And one of the topics that we discussed about is, hey, whether it's right or left, you have a lot of people, I guess you could say, infiltrating companies, trying to make them for their social causes anymore. And I'm like, where does an employer draw the line? And his answer surprised me. I like it, but it did surprise me. I did not expect him to say that, well, ultimately that's going to be, it's top down as far as what the more permanent leadership of that company wants. You should stay out of it, but it should be fulfilling their business goals, and it shouldn't be based upon what an employee or an outside group is trying to push you to do. Because otherwise, then, you're going to have maybe some employees who are probably going to be temporary, and temporary could be 2, 3, 4 years, but they're not going to be there for the whole life of the business, dictating how your business operates and what your business does.
Yeah, for sure. And a very recent example is the software company called Basecamp.
Yes. Very familiar with that.
They had effectively the inmates were running the asylum. The owners finally said enough, and they lost about 40% of their employees once the rules got rewritten. The owners decided that instead of trying to hold on to even valuable folks, especially in a tough time to find good talent, they were going to try to reorient their true north and reclaim their company culture. And it created a terrific amount of blowback. But that can happen if, in fact, you allow the edges to take over the middle of your culture. So I think
blowback, I think, though, it was short-lived. I mean, it's not like it dread on for months. It was a very, very harsh blowback. And Coinbase also had a similar experience. As far as them doing the same, like, hey, look, this stuff is so far out from what our core business is. We're wasting so much time, resources, and money, and our product is actually suffering. We need to get back in revamping our product, especially if you look at somebody like Basecamp, which is basically a project management tool for people that don't know. And you've got a lot of hot competition because my day job at Vision 33, for example, I mean, we used to use Basecamp. Now we end up using Smartsheets and Microsoft Teams to manage everything instead of Basecamp because it has that capability. And that's where Basecamp, if they weren't distracted and focused at their task at hand and looking at the current environment and did that time, resource, and money into the product, perhaps they could have kept us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Basecamp is beating itself. And I think it's okay for an employer to acknowledge people have an interest in talking about politics or the issues of the day, but our focus has to be on improving our products for our customers. All other conversations need to be saved for off hours or at different times. But that's what crept into the cultural apparatus of Basecamp and Coinbase.
So what about can you give us an example as far as what about when a company is, you had said like, hey, if you're given a choice, door one, door two, because there is the group mob mentality right now where you're either with us or you're against us. And again, it's on both sides. I mean, it's horrible. And this is actually a topic that I speak about on this show frequently because, again, we don't really discuss hardcore politics, but we will talk about regulation and stuff like that affects business. And one thing that I stress is nuance. People have forgotten that there is nuance in life. I am never going to completely be right wing or left wing. Okay. It's just impossible unless I'm just going to, believe what everybody tells me. I mean, I have personal beliefs that are on both sides, depends what the issue is. And most people, I think, are like that, but we're being driven by those fringe edges that are just so loud and relentless, because they have unlimited funding from these million and billionaires on both sides of the aisle, and they just don't stop. They don't give up until they get what they want. So my question to you then would be, if you're given door one or door two, and they're like, hey, you're with us and you're against us, and maybe you have both sides pressuring for an answer, both sides say, hey, you with us or you against us? And you've got to find a window to smash. Do you have a good example of something like that is where somebody smashed that window to get out of that sticky situation?
I think we're seeing some examples today in the airline industry as they respond to the pandemic. You'll see differences.
Are you speaking specifically Southwest?
Yeah, you'll see differences between Southwest and Delta, for example. Delta was an early adopter of vaccines are mandatory for everyone. Southwest just is following the federal rule, but Gary Kelly was quoted the other day as saying, I don't agree with this, but that's the federal rule. And we are a contractor of the federal government. So there we go. So really interesting to see how that subject, very raw, nerved subject, is being dealt with through specific ways and nuanced ways. Door number ones, door number twos, and a bunch of other airlines are choosing their own door, which is say nothing.
Right. I mean, that's the one thing. Now, I do not know how truthful this is. I tend to believe that this is the truth, but Biden did say about the companies with 100 or more people needing the vaccinations. I believe that was what he said. But from my understanding, OSHA has yet to implement that actual rule. I could be wrong on that, but I mean, that was my understanding as far as a week ago. Like Biden gave, I guess he said he was given the order, but they haven't actually made that regulation yet.
Oh, it's possible. Yeah. I remember the reading, and this is early days back in June, July of 2020, that the EEOC, which has province over small businesses as well, did in fact issue an opinion saying employers could mandate vaccinations. And so,
right. Well, I think
that direction's been headed. We've been headed in that direction.
I definitely think that's true, to where they gave them the, the quote unquote authority until it gets to the courts, I assume.
Correct.
That they could mandate it. However, the actual rule, like Biden was saying, as far as, hey, all companies, 100 or more employees must get their employees vaccinated. That's the rule that specifically I've read. Now, again, this is a couple of days since I've read it, so who knows in the last 48 hours if they've made this official, and we are recording this on October 14th. So with that, then, that it has not been made official by OSHA that they put that regulation. So I'll check into a little bit more, but I mean, it's a tough environment to be in. And then you run into the same issues. Well, okay, like Southwest again, the airlines, they operate out of Texas. Texas just signed an executive order by the governor banning that. So it's kind of like, who do you listen to? White House says, hey, federal law supersedes state law, but then, okay, you have sanctuary states, you have medical marijuana, you have legal marijuana in states. So does federal law actually supersede state laws or not? I mean, it's kind of where there's a lot of holes in that theory.
It's fair to say it's a mess right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty complicated. So,
but you know what? You said something really important, David, in the phrase tough environment.
Yes.
We should unpack that for a second, because the question is, what makes it so tough? One of the things that makes the environment so tough is this either door number one or door number two narrative split. But that split is driven in large part by traditional media. And when I think about crisis communication these days, the reason it's so interesting to me and why I feel like it's a valuable service is that the average length of a story in any broadcast news, say the 10 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news, those stories on average are about 40 seconds long.
Yeah.
And the sound bites inside of those stories on average, and this is really longitudinal research, 9.8 seconds.
Wow.
That's how much time you have to make your point in a tight news hole, in a really tight soundbite. And so that's how we're speaking to one another these days. What do we expect?
I mean, with that though, too, I mean, people are losing total faith as well, too, in mass media. And I mean, it's quite frankly, I mean, like, look, New York Times just had their big report on COVID, and, they had their statistic in there about, I think it was 900,000 kids that were severely hospitalized with COVID was the quote. And here that number wasn't even close. And they had to issue retraction after retraction after retraction and corrections and republish it and stuff like that. And time again, you keep seeing this. It's kind of like, I feel like media these days are going after knee-jerk reactions on the emotion and whatever's going to get them clicks and watches, and that's all they care about. The media is no longer about telling the news how it is it's being more run like a business trying to make as much money than actually doing what the media should be doing, which is informing the public without bias, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we are in an era of clickbait, and I'll say two things about this. The first is media absolutely thrives on negativity. There's great science studying that, and it's true. Second, the media thrives on it and sells advertising space into it because we thrive on it. The consuming audience thrives on it. We are very tuned into negative information because it's outside of what we expect. If it's expected, it's boring. If it's unexpected, it's titillating, and I'm going to watch it. I'm going to click on it. And so this is human nature that is playing itself out in the media institution.
You know what drives me nuts? The worst type of media articles. First off, I'm a millennial. I curse a lot, but I curse when I feel it is proper to curse, to add emphasis on something. But you see all these quote unquote cool media outlets that'll put like the F-bomb or something like that in their title, like something from a Vice or a Vox. And I don't know, that just screams to me like there's just too much emotion. It doesn't matter what the subject is. It's totally biased because it's being written from an emotional angle instead of being written from a factual angle. And I don't even click on those articles.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you've properly conditioned yourself to recognize you're being baited into something. That the use of slurs or curse words, etc. That's just juvenile, and it's there for one reason: get you to click on it.
Yeah, and it's just horrible. The other type of articles I hate, I despise them, where it's like, oh, somebody said this on Twitter. Here's all the reaction while they got roasted, and it's just like republishing the tweets of what people said. It's like, come on, isn't there any more? Like, are they that desperate for context that they're gonna take someone's bad tweet and just throw up what they feel is the best burns to that tweet? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it is a bit of it's just sort of like, don't you people have something better to do?
Right.
Business.
Right. So I do want to talk about a few other topics. We have a lot of small business owners, working professionals, smaller corporations that watch a show. So hearing this conversation with the PR, the communications, I think it is critical for them to hear that type of stuff because, oftentimes they get thrown in a bad storm because of something. And especially if they're a small business, they don't have the experience for that. They probably don't have a PR guy. They might have some 22-year-old marketing person that works for them that has never had to do this in actual real life. And it puts them in a bad spot. And I think this conversation is extremely, extremely valuable for them. But I did want to touch on, what you specialize in specifically with the PR is going to be the food and beverage industry. Okay. How well do you know how that industry actually operates and stuff like that?
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of experience up and down the chain from agricultural to food processing all the way to retail. One of our largest clients right now is 800 plus franchise quick serve restaurant. And so lots of things go wrong on a daily basis in places like those. And, for the last decade, we've been very tuned into the ebbs and flows of retail food. And it's a challenging environment for sure. And I think something that you set up is terrific for people to hear. You get tossed into a storm unexpectedly. That's one of the dimensions of crisis. It's unexpected. It's public. That's the second dimension. And the person that you would normally have communicating externally could be a person who has no depth of experience in this kind of situation. So the challenge I've always found to be true is that is avoiding the knee-jerk reaction. And the knee-jerk reaction is, we did something wrong, we better apologize for it. Well, two really bad assumptions right there. You may not have done something wrong. And apologies can be weaponized. So be really careful.
Because it's admitting guilt.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Now, there are really good moments in time when apologies are terrific rhetorical devices, and it should be used. But think about and sweep aside the assumptions that you might have, like, we did something wrong. I'm the CEO. I need to issue an apology. And I better call a press conference. All of those things are really bad assumptions. So in this age that you and I have talked about, in this context, you have to have your options laid out more carefully. And what I mean, I say that very deliberately because you can't know every situation. You don't know what's going to happen. But as long as you have options, you don't need answers. You just need a set of tools that you can use when the spaghetti hits the fan. And so I think that's the place to play these days is let's make sure we've got the right tools in place no matter what happens.
Did you say spaghetti because you work in the food industry?
Yeah, that's my G-rated. Spaghetti hits the fan. That's my G-rated phrase.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So I guess last question here for you, Jeff, is do you think this cancel culture type thing that's going on, do you think people are going to get tired of it? Do you think it's going to end, or do you think this is here to stay?
I think both are true. And this is a yes and kind of my find a window to jump through answer. Cancel culture has actually helped contour people's responses or knee-jerk reactions of blurting stuff out. And there's some benefit to it. At the same time, there's also backlash that's happening right now. I mean, just the phrase cancel culture is an artifact of backlash. So that's healthy too. It's pushing us back into the middle. I'm going to be careful what I say, but I can say it. And I'm going to be careful how I respond because people have a right to say what they think and what they feel.
Yeah.
So all these things are forcing us off of the edges back into the middle. I feel like it's not going to go away, but level out.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, well, if you ask Dave Chappelle, he wants to be canceled every day now because apparently he's loving it. It has worked out very well for him. So he says. But I mean, my personal take on it is I think canceling somebody, getting them removed, especially for something that, misspoke, they just said it out loud and didn't word it carefully. I mean, it's happened to a lot of people where their intentions were pure, but it came out the wrong way.
Intention.
Or they said something wrong 10 years ago. That's where calling it out, I think, is good. I don't think that's necessarily bad. It's you said something 10 years ago. I don't care how remorseful you are. You can never work another day for any company for the rest of your life. That's where I kind of draw the line there. That's where I don't believe in. And that's where I hope that there's enough backlash on the cancel culture thing to where it pushes it out of that level. Call people out. That's cool. I'm fine with that. If you're going to be out there in the public sphere or do something, that's you putting yourself at risk and you should be held accountable for that.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Cancel people for the right reasons. Don't cancel them just because they said something that angers you from X amount of years ago.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it is incumbent upon those who put themselves in the public space to know this is a part of being in that space. So
Yep.
get ready to engage with that conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I got one. Well, that was the last question, but I guess the new last question. We have two last questions today. The new last question is: how can people digitally stalk you? I said digitally, eh? You get an actual stalker? Not for me.
Well, best way to find me is through my author page. My book is called Breaking Bad News: 12 Essential Crisis Communication Tools. And you can find me at breakingbadnewsbook.com. And Dave, for your listeners, I still have a few hundred advanced reader copies of the book.
Oh.
If any of your listeners would like a no charge copy, it'll cost you the whatever the postage is.
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
You can go to breakingbadnewsbook.com. And for your listeners, I'm very happy to open that up and make sure that anybody who, in the next, after the show airs,
yes,
for 72 hours after that, you can get yourself a free copy.
That is amazing. And you have a copy of the book next to you, I believe, right?
For
Show
sure.
it off.
Yep.
Show people what it looks like. Breaking Bad News. I see the Breaking Bad. I love Breaking Bad. That was a great TV show.
Well, I felt like the combination of breaking news, bad news, it just was a natural fit.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Definitely, everybody, we'll have the link down below in the description, whether you're on the audio format of the podcast or you're on the YouTube vodcast. Also, look at the pinned link down below. Please make sure you get his book. You just heard Jeff speak. I mean, I got to tell you, this was an amazing chat. It was pretty fun.
I enjoyed it very much.
Do you think we're going to get canceled for this?
There's a possibility that because we've put ourselves in a public space, that we might find ourselves confronted by that conversation.
There you go. There you go. But hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, and definitely get you back here sometime next year.
You are welcome. And thank you very much. All the best to all of your listeners.
Okay. Cheers. That was an incredible chat with Jeff, right? Did you like it? Yeah? I think you're lying, but I'll trust you. First, you all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it sparked some warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help us out, because you all know Shark Bite Biz is the greatest kept secret in small business, please share us out to your network, your friends, your colleagues, even your parents. Your parents will love Shark Bite Biz. Get us out there. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you dwell on the interwebs, get us out there. We're the reason that this channel, you're the reason why this channel can grow. We survive on you sharing these episodes, so thank you so much. Now let's get back to our rock star guest, Jeff, because that was a totally incredible interview, and I really loved it. And, talking about love, the love started with Jeff's story. From farmer to food brand PR expert, which allowed him to become an expert on managing crises within a business. Breaking bad news is an unfortunate part of the job anymore. People are being canceled left and right. And what happens when one of your employees does something to get canceled? What happens if you accidentally do it as a brand? What do you do? And that's why another item that I really enjoyed talking with Jeff about was the rapid response team model and how to jump on something and kill it before the Twitter mob gets a hold of it and just things explode out of control. Overall, Jeff and his discussion of how to handle breaking bad news was amazing. It was great. I totally love it. It really made me think and reflect upon, many things that I do during my life, whether it's breaking bad news to an employee or it's breaking bad news to the world. This interview, especially rewatching the interview, really made me rethink about some of the things that I do. And I think it gave me some new insight on how I will personally start delivering bad news going forward. As mentioned during the interview, Jeff has some extra books laying around. Click the pinned link below to go to his website and get a copy of his book for free before they run out. Question of the day. What did you do during your last PR fiasco? Leave a comment down below on YouTube. I'd love to hear those stories. Remember, do you want to be on the show? If so, interviews at sharkbitebiz.com. Please remember, join the channel if you're on YouTube. It's $3 a month to join the channel, and you can become a baby shark. If not, head on over to our coffee brand where you get the freshest coffee available. It is roasted, sealed, and shipped within a 24-hour period. All you got to do is head on over to deadhousecoffee.com. Yes, it's zombie themed. Okay, deadhousecoffee.com. Use code SHARK. You'll get 20% off your order. We'll get all the proceeds to continue growing this show. As you all know by now, I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz, and we'll see you next episode. Say bye, Jordan.
Bye.
Bye. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Shark Bite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.